In the headlines, Chairman of GCOM Justice retired Claudette Singh has asked the High Court to throw out the case which seeks to stop her from declaring the results of a national vote recount. But the Attorney General says GCOM must use the report of the Chief Elections Officer to declare the results.
GCOM did not invalidate any vote. GCOM doesn't have the capacity to do so.
The Permanent Council of the OAS will convene a special meeting on Tuesday to discuss Guyana's elections crisis. A businessman is arrested in connection with the execution-style murder of a well-known Lusignan contractor. 3 COVID-19 patients who were in critical condition in the intensive care unit have now fully recovered after being treated with the antibodies from survivors. And in sport, Akim Green and Avinash Ramzan reflect on England's most dominant day of the Test series against West Indies. With the news, I'm Kurt Campbell. We're glad you could join us. First up, Attorney General Basil Williams on Friday argued before the High Court that the Guyana Elections Commission must accept the report of the Chief Elections Officer regardless of what it is. Williams is a respondent in the case brought by an APNU-AFC agent, Masinga Jones, who wants the court to invalidate the national vote recount and have GCOM declare a result based on a District 4 declaration that has been proven to contain fictitious numbers aimed at giving APNU-AFC a victory at the March 2nd elections.
That is why the provision is now in the Constitution that the CEO, that is, the chairman, could no longer act independently of the CEO, but in fact, the chairman must accept the advice of the CEO.
Let me ask you this question. If the advice is, and I'm not saying it absolutely it is in this case, but I'm making a hypothetical proposition. If the advice of the CEO is flawed, then what? It must be accepted?
But Your Honor, they will have to go by an election petition if they're saying it's flawed. You know that there was a lot of chatter saying that for the past 4 months, who must go to the election commission. We have a situation under the electoral machinery of this country where the CEO, in fact, is acting in pursuance of relieving this country of that mischief that had occurred in 1997. And having done so, it's inexorable. But, Your Honor, I'm not alone in that.
It seems as though the other side, we have the other respondents. From what I'm reading in their submissions, they're saying the mischief, there's now a new mischief.
The chairman of GCOM must declare David Granger as having been elected from the March 2nd general and regional elections as president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
The Attorney General argued for the national vote recount to be thrown out despite repeated assurances from President David Granger that he is not interfering in the work of GCOM. The President also relied on the CARICOM scrutinized recount as a legitimate means to settle the country's elections crisis. The CARICOM high-level team came to the inescapable conclusion that figures from the recount reflect the will of the people and should be used to make a declaration. Meanwhile, Justice Claudette Singh, the chairwoman of the Guyana Elections Commission, GCOM, has asked the High Court to throw out the case which seeks to stop her from declaring the results of a national vote recount and to instead only use figures concocted by the Chief Elections Officer, Lowenfield. In arguments put to the court Friday, Justice Singh, through her attorney Kim Kai Thomas, argued that Lowenfield cannot go off on a frolic of his own and put himself above GCOM, the laws of Guyana, and even the Constitution. Justice Singh reasoned that it would be unthinkable that one man, an employee of GCOM, could be vested with such absolute and unchecked power. The decision of the Chief Justice will determine if an elections report prepared by Lowenfield with the help of President David Granger's disgraced APNU-AFC coalition could be used to declare an election results and prevent Ali and the PPP from taking office, or if Justice Singh can lawfully move ahead and have him sworn in. The recount showed that the PPP scored 15,416 votes, more than that of the APNU-AFC. Masinga Jones and agents of Granger's coalition filed a case in the High Court on matters which have already been addressed and dismissed by the Caribbean Court of Justice. Guyana's final court of appeal, and so it tramples on the res judicata principle and should be thrown out, Justice Singh argued. Attorney Kim Kai Thomas stated that matters challenging the electoral process belong to an elections petition and GCOM should be allowed to bring the electoral process to an end.
Your Honor, those observations were in direct response to the decision by the Court of Appeal to read Order 60 in a particular way as amending the Constitution. Your Honor, Article 8 of the Constitution also speaks to that. What Article 8 says, Your Honor, is that in any event, even if a subsidiary legislation or another piece of legislation comes into conflict with the Constitution, it will be void to the extent of its inconsistency. Not void ab initio, but void to the extent of its inconsistency. And Your Honor, it is this time-honored principle which the Apex Court was simply endorsing. I wish to make a further point, Your Honor. GCOM at no stage intended or set out to usurp, trample, trespass, or somehow take upon itself the clear provisions of Article 163 of the Constitution. That was never the intention of Order 60. Order 60, the purpose, the aim of Order 60 was simply to produce a final credible count of the votes of the March 2020 elections. How was that to be done? That was to be done in a clear, transparent manner, with all stakeholders present, with live streaming. Your Honor, a reading of David's judgment in the Apex Court shows clearly that Order 60 was endorsed by our highest court. The court references the procedure outlined in Order 60. And why that was necessary? That was necessary, Your Honor, because there were difficulties, there were controversies which visited the electoral process. And what the law says must happen. The very Constitution that my dear friend is relying on, 162.1 states clearly what GCOM must do when these issues arise. And it is out of that, Your Honor, that Section 22, therefore, becomes relevant. So GCOM, all GCOM did, Your Honor, was allow, or by virtue of Order 60, allow a credible recount of the votes to be done. GCOM did not invalidate any vote. GCOM doesn't have the capacity to do so. That is why we have the clear, exclusive jurisdiction of the High Court, Your Honor, to deal with those issues.
If the GCOM chair is not allowed to use results from the recount, Guyana will face crippling sanctions by its key development partners, the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and Canada, and would be ostracized by key organizations such as the Commonwealth, the OAS, and the CARICOM. The United States has already imposed visa sanctions against ministers of Granger's coalition and senior officials of GCOM. The Permanent Council of the Organization of American States, OAS, will convene a special meeting on Guyana's 4-month-long electoral process on Tuesday, July 21. The OAS has issued several calls for the election's results to be declared based on the results of the recount. Bibi Katoon has more details.
Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, on July 13th, requested a meeting of the Permanent Council of the OAS to discuss the state of the electoral process in Guyana. Chair of the Permanent Council, Ambassador Luis Montoya, on Friday announced that a special virtual meeting will be held on Tuesday, July 21st at 14:30 hours. The March 2nd general and regional elections is the only item on the agenda for discussion. The OAS is made up of 35 member states. Guyana remains in limbo over 4 months after citizens voted at the polls and no winner has been declared. The organization in March sent an electoral observer mission to Guyana, led by former Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding, but the team withdrew following a non-transparent declarations of votes cast in Region 4, the largest electoral district. However, the OAS continued its support for the electoral process in Guyana throughout the national vote recount, which concluded over a month ago and showed the opposition People's Progressive Party as the winner of the polls by over 15,000 votes. The incumbent APNU-AFC, led by Brigadier Retired David Granger, has refused to concede defeat, and the recount result is now being challenged in the High Court by a supporter of the coalition. Chief Elections Officer Kit Lowenfield was 3 times asked to submit a report based on the national recount, but each time he doctored his report to show a win for the coalition APNU-AFC. The last of those reports include fraudulent numbers declared by the returning officer of District 4, Claremont Mingo. As a result of Lowenfield's brazen rebellion, political parties have mounted pressure on the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, to dismiss him with immediate effect. The Organization of American States remained vocal and in one of its strongest statements yet on June 11th, said that there can be no justification for Lowenfield's actions. According to the OAS, this confirms that the Chief Elections Officer has acted in bad faith and contrary to the interests of democracy in Guyana. The OAS made it clear that the only democratic solution for Guyana at this time is respect for the results of the national recount. The OAS said, and I quote, "No other figures, neither those prepared prior to the recount, nor those recently invalidated by the Caribbean Court of Justice, nor any others that may be unilaterally devised by the Chief Elections Officer, can have any place in the final determination of the results." Bibi Katun, Newsroom.
The United Kingdom has officially revealed that it has started the process of imposing sanctions on Guyana and certain individuals if the recount of the March 2nd election is not declared, showing the People's Progressive Party the winner of the elections. A statement Friday from UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said it has been over 4 months since the elections in Guyana and no electorate should have to wait that long for a result. He said the UK is disappointed by the ongoing attempts to frustrate the will of the people. The Caribbean Community scrutinized recount cleared the way to declare a legitimate result. That should not happen, he noted. The UK made it clear that any government sworn in on the basis of non-credible results will face strong international condemnation and consequences. Meanwhile, the state government of Roraima, the Brazilian state that borders Guyana, has called for the swift declaration of Irfan Ali as president. Roraima is the state where most Guyanese live and work and where most trade with Guyana and Brazilian businesses takes place. Its capital is Boa Vista, which houses a Guyanese consulate. The state government, in a statement, said it has been attentively following the elections and is especially concerned about the lengthy period in which the democratically elected candidate, Dr. Irfan Ali, remains undeclared. The instability caused by the actions that delayed the announcement of the new president harms democracy itself and disrespects the will of the people, the state government said. The state of Roraima said it sides with the Caribbean Court of Justice, the Organization of American States, the European Union, the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and Canada in asking that the final result of the election is promptly announced and the will of the Guyanese people is respected. When the newsroom returns, a businessman is arrested in connection with the execution-style murder of a well-known Lusignan contractor, and cops are charged in connection with the 2019 death of a prisoner. An East Coast Demerara businessman was arrested Thursday night in connection with the execution-style killing of well-known contractor Kisundat Premsuk. Premsuk's relative told the newsroom that he was owed millions of dollars from a number of persons and someone tried to kill him on Father's Day this year. Isanella Patwa reports.
Regional Commander Senior Superintendent Philip Azor told the newsroom Friday that an East Coast Demerara businessman was arrested in connection with Thursday's execution-style killing of well-known contractor, 49-year-old Kisundat Premsuk. The businessman was arrested Thursday night and is in custody cooperating with investigators. Premsuk, a contractor and a father of 3 of Lusignan, East Coast Demerara, was shot 3 times, twice in the back and once to the head. He died on the spot. The incident occurred at a construction site on Dorban Street, Lodge, Thursday afternoon. His brother, Hardat Premsuk, spoke with the newsroom via telephone Friday.
He was shot on Father's Day too, you know. On Father's Day, they were at him to kill him. He was shot 2 times on Father's Day. That's one attempt they make to kill him. And then this one now that happened yesterday.
The Father's Day shooting occurred at College Inn, East Coast, Demerara, at a friend's house.
Yesterday, I don't know what transpired, but next thing you know, he was at the work site talking to some man, the people that he worked for. Like, it was a church. He was building a church, you know. You know that? He was building a church on the upper street. At the same time, the pastor didn't come, and you know they were having a discussion. As soon as they moved up, they were the shooting took place.
His brother said that the contractor took a number of persons to court for monies owed to him, including a policeman.
Oh, a very nice guy, you know. You give him money, man. That's his problem. He just give him money and he just trust everybody money. He trust everybody property and so on. Many people buy him. I have people say only like $100 million. They check up 2, 4, 4, 10, 5, 9. So people. Helpful guy, man. Helpful guy. So all this thing we're investigating right now, all who we and so, you know, and who got problem with it, like we carry them to court for getting money and so, you know, then type of thing. I will try and recall all that thing and try to put them together.
Meanwhile, a statement from police headquarters revealed that Primstock was at the site with his employees when an armed male approached at around 17:40 hours and discharged several rounds at him. Primstock was pronounced dead on arrival at the Georgetown Public Hospital at about 18:13 hours. Reporting for Newsroom, I am Isanella Patwo.
1 year after the death of 39-year-old Lal Bachan at the Suddy Police Station lockup, a female lance corporal was charged with manslaughter and 2 other officers were charged with attempting to obstruct the course of justice. The man's widow on Friday said she's satisfied, but she still needs answers about exactly what occurred on the fateful day. Bibi Katoon has the details.
39-year-old Lal Bachan, a taxi driver, was found dead inside the Suddy Police Station lockup on July 1, 2019. On Friday, female Special Lance Corporal Vanessa Milo of the Aurora Police Station appeared at the Suddy Magistrates Court before Magistrate Esther Sam, where she was slapped with a manslaughter charge. She was not required to plead to the charge and was placed on $400,000 bail, police said in a statement. Detective Corporal Dwayne Braffett of Anna Regina Police Station and Constable Denzel Glasgow of the Suddy Police Station also appeared in court, where they were charged separately with the offense of attempt to obstruct the course of justice. They too were not required to plead to the charges and were granted $50,000 bail each. The man's widow, Samantha Bachan, told the Newsroom in a telephone interview on Friday that she is satisfied that her family will get justice, but she still needs answers.
Well, I feel satisfied. At least I know that the progress is being done and they are getting there. And I hope that later on that I will get justice. I need to see more. I mean, like, I want to know who did it. Yes, I want to know who did the act. I mean, some of them, yes, they were charged and so forth, but we haven't got all of the information we needed as yet. And when I went there today, it brought up so many memories of last year's incident, and it kind of made me really, really sad. Knowing that, you just kind of get back all these kind of memories, and, it kind of hurt you that bad.
The woman said she's left to care for her children ages 8 and 10.
Well, I'm working at Study Hospital, and I'm trying somehow, I'm maintaining for them. I'm trying to give them everything they need, and I'm getting by. With God's grace, I'm getting by.
Bachan was arrested 3 days before his death after 2 warrants were issued for driving under the influence of alcohol. After he was found dead inside the Suddy Police Station lockup, the police had said the body bore no marks of violence and he was the lone prisoner in the cell. However, his family provided photos to show that there were injuries to his face, legs, arm, back, and neck. A postmortem showed that he suffocated after suffering from a fractured larynx known as the voice box. On July 5, 2019, attorney Anil Nandlal took up the case and pushed for a thorough investigation. The case is adjourned to August 7, 2020 for report. Bibi Katoon, Newsroom.
A 56-year-old Essequibo Coast resident who spent the last 27 months on remand for killing his 30-year-old nephew was released from prison based on time served by High Court Judge Sandil Kisoon on Friday. Kenrick Armagon, known as Ricky, pleaded guilty to the offense of manslaughter, which stated that on April 23, 2020, at Bushlot Village, Esupebo Coast, he unlawfully killed Narish Ramdas, a 30-year-old fisherman. During the sentencing via Zoom hearing, Armagon was represented by attorney at law Ravindra Mohabir, while the state was represented by prosecutor Lisa Cave. Justice Kisoon began Armagon's sentence at a base of 25 years and deducted 1/3 for his early guilty plea, time spent on remand, and took into consideration that Ramdas was the aggressor in the case. Finally, the judge came to the final sentence of 27 months. However, this was considered as time served in prison from the date of Armagon's arrest to the date of his hearing. The court heard that the uncle and nephew lived in the same yard at Bushlot Village, but in separate houses. On the day of the incident, the two were involved in an argument in their yard. Armagon, who was armed with a knife, was being escorted to the head of the street by another relative when Ramdas ran behind him and clubbed him in the head with a piece of wood. The wood broke and Armagon picked up a piece of it, and a scuffle ensued, during which Armagon used the knife to stab Ramdas. Still ahead on the newsroom, 3 COVID-19 patients who were in critical condition in the intensive care have now fully recovered after being treated with the antibodies from survivors. 3 COVID-19 patients who were in critical condition in the intensive care unit have now fully recovered after being treated with convalescent plasma collected from recovered patients. Cardiologist Dr. Mahendra Karpan, during an interview with the Newsroom's Isanella Patwa, explained that 4 patients were initially administered the treatment, but the first patient died. The treatment started as a critical trial but has been approved by the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, and the Ministry of Public Health as a viable treatment for COVID-19. Guyana is among the first countries in the Caribbean to use the treatment for COVID-19.
First of all, let me just expand on what really is convalescent plasma. So whenever somebody gets an infection, the body tends to try and mount a response to fight off the infection. And it does so by creating their own soldiers. We call them antibodies. So when it comes to convalescent plasma and its use in fighting COVID-19 infection, what we try to do is to identify patients who have had COVID-19 and have recovered, and knowing what we know about patients' immune reaction, we assume that these patients who are recovered have enough of these antibodies in their blood. And so we then take that, process it, and give it to other patients who have COVID-19 infection but are probably not doing so well. So there are specific criteria that are used in selecting patients for donor as well as selecting patients for recipient. And this is all an informed consent-driven process where patients are counseled before they actually donate or before they receive the convalescent plasma, which is a blood product. We actually started about 2 months ago, and so far we have had 4 patients who have received the transfusion. But we have been lucky and we are blessed with a very generous population of patients who are willing to help each other. So we have had a very good result and response from patients when we ask them to donate their blood plasma when they recover from this condition. And so far we have had very good high response, favorable rates for donation. We've had 4 patients who received the convalescent plasma. 3 of them are alive and doing well. Unfortunately, the very first patient did not survive, but it was used in a time when there was nothing else to be done, and we use it on what we call a compassionate basis. Patient is extremely sick, we don't have anything else to offer, and we decided to try this. Same thing that applies to any blood donation. Once a patient is recovered, there's a certain number of days beyond which, we want the patient to be symptom-free, and then we ask them to donate their blood, make sure they don't have any other infectious diseases that can transmit from one person to the other. And it's a very straightforward procedure. The blood, when it's taken, is also screened and for any kind of adverse particles or infection that can be transmitted from one person to the other. So it goes through a very strict and rigorous process of confirmation that this is suitable to be transfused from one person to the other. So right now we don't have anyone who's actively receiving convalescent plasma. The protocol dictates that the one that we use, actually, we give 2 units of convalescent plasma, and we make the assumption that within those 2 units they have enough transfused antibodies to fight off the infection that they have. We don't have anyone currently, as of this week I believe, who would have received the convalescent plasma. In terms of the age, so far we have not had to transfuse any patient below, who are not adults. So Georgetown Hospital is the premier healthcare institution in Guyana, as we all know. And so we have been the lead in using this technology and this treatment option for patients. And so we have only been able to use it in quite sick patients. And yes, they would have met criteria to be admitted in the ICU. And those are the types of patients that have recovered. I'm not aware of a requirement for permission to treat patients if you think it's going to make them better. But it is always nice to have whatever therapy you're using to be approved by the relevant authorities. I know for a fact that now it is approved by PAHO and WHO as a viable means of treatment. And of course our Ministry of Health, or Ministry of Public Health in Guyana, is also on board with this therapy.
5 more persons were on Friday tested positive for COVID-19, bringing the total number of cases to 320. As the country embarks on phase 3 of the reopening of the economy on Saturday, Deputy Chief Medical Officer Dr. Karen Gordon-Boyle urged persons to continue taking precautions to protect themselves and families.
To date, the total number of tests done is 4,796. The total number of persons tested is 3,558, with 3,238 being negative. As of 17th of July 2020, of the 75 tests that were done, 5 new cases were found, bringing the number of positives to 320, with 19 COVID-related deaths. The number of active cases in institutional isolation is 145. 8 persons are in institutional quarantine, and 5 persons are in COVID ICU. As you are aware, friends, from tomorrow, a further relaxation of measures is due to take effect, and the ministry wishes to remind you that restrictions on social activities remain in place, as well as the social and physical distancing protocols. Some of the measures relaxed include the extension of the curfew hours from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., the reopening of stores and business places from 8 to 5 p.m., the return to work of persons employed in the public and private sectors on rotation, restriction of indoor and buffet dining, but permission for outdoor dining up to 6 p.m., provided the hygiene measures and physical distancing protocols are respected. I know that many of us will want to take full advantage of these new measures, but please do not throw caution to the wind and behave as if the situation is back to normal. Do not forget that COVID-19 is still a highly infectious disease, that there will be asymptomatic persons around us from whom we may become infected. Do not take unnecessary risks and leave home without your masks and fail to observe the physical distancing protocol.
President of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Justice Adrian Saunders, called for the use of more electronic filings and other advanced techniques to improve the criminal justice system. He was at the time addressing a virtual UNDP forum about the administration of justice in 9 Caribbean countries, including Guyana. The UNDP conducted an extensive assessment which sought to provide an up-to-date analysis of the main opportunities and challenges in the region that can be improved by donor funding.
Courts in the region need to graduate to electronic filing and case management systems. And generally, not just courts, but also police and prosecutorial departments must embrace modern information and communication technology so that they can better serve the public. Criminal justice system in most states in the region is in need of overhaul. This is a mammoth task that requires all arms of the state to be on the same page at the same time. After 40 years and more of study after study, task force after task force, the magistracy in the Eastern Caribbean is still to be fully professionalized and brought fully under the judicial branch. And generally speaking, much work still remains to be done in magistrates and parish courts across the region.
When the newsroom returns, the financial, weather and bridge reports along with sport.